Hello and welcome once again to another SIU Alumni Live chat here with us at noon. I'm Caleb Hale. I'm the Director of Communications for the SIU Alumni Association. And before I bring on today's guest, I do want to do just a couple things of housekeeping. If you haven't already, check out our events page. It's online. It's siualumni.eventbrite.com, or you can just look it up on our events tab at siualumni.com. But we do have a number of events that will be coming up here shortly. We're starting to fill out our calendar. Already had a couple, actually, probably three, one virtual, two in person at this point to start off just in January. But starting to go strong, and we'll be kicking that back off again in the near future. So siualumni.eventbrite.com, you can sign up for any of these events that you kind of see here right now, and we'll be filling out that roster as we move along. So today I wanted to introduce everyone to our guest. His name is John Pollitz. He is the Dean of Library Affairs here at SIUC, but he has also taken on a new project here in the last couple years called the Saluki Stories podcast. And I'll let him introduce himself very shortly and tell us a little bit about the origins of this project and what it's all about. Thanks, John, for being with us today.
Thank you, Caleb. Thanks for the opportunity. This is really cool. Hi, everybody out there in alumni land. Of course, I am a lifelong SIU Alumni Association member, and I graduated from SIU back in 1975. And so I really am a lover of this place and love talking to alumni. And this is how it came about that I started doing a thing called Saluki Stories. And it's a podcast where I interview alumni who have done something interesting or who are just alumni. And so I've been able to meet a whole lot of interesting people. And that's the Saluki Stories, Oral Histories from SIU. This came about when I was talking to someone, my Kevin Clark, who's the foundation representative for Library Affairs, my division, my college, and we started thinking about how to do a podcast and how to tell the stories of our alumni. And so at homecoming 2019, we had a bunch of students. We got a bunch of students together. It was the opening of the alumni offices. We wanted to celebrate that, the new home for the Alumni Association. We wanted to celebrate that, and so we got a whole bunch of people with microphones and digital recorders, and we went out and we scheduled these alumni to tell their stories. You know, what it was like back here when they were students, what they've done lately, and how their education here at SIU helped them in their careers. And so we interviewed about 26 people that homecoming, and then it kind of set for a while, a year, and we finally got around to putting them on the air, and so fall of 2020, I started publishing these. I had to learn how to work the publishing process of a podcast.
So it's what we all did on our downtime during we were stuck at home. We all learned a little bit of new technology.
Exactly. Yeah. And I hadn't listened to them all, but as I listened to them and put them up on the Anchor site you just saw, it was so interesting. And one of them, I got to do the interview, and not because of me, but it was so excellent, so moving. I interviewed two women, Nikki Lindhorst and Nikki Lindquist. No, I'm sorry, it was right. Nikki Lindhorst and Linda Hoover, and they were two alumni women who had gone through the Air Force ROTC program here, and they talked about what it was like to be single moms while at SIU in the early 90s, and then what ROTC meant to help to them and help them stay in college, work hard, became the whole part of their lives, because they actually were still in the Air Force, had lifelong careers in the Air Force. We talked about some of the challenges that they had, and I'll tell you, all of us were crying partway through it. It was just a moving thing, and it's a great story, how life here in Carbondale and at SIU changed their lives for the better, of course.
And I remember when we were in the kind of chaotic scene of us doing our grand opening for the Alumni Center back in 2019. We were, we had the goal. We wanted about 20. We wanted to try and find 20 people to tell these stories, and we were kind of grabbing whoever we could who would agree to it. We had our 50-year reunion happening at the time, so we grabbed some of them, some other people from our 80s and 90s group to tell the story. You got that initial set. What are you up to now today, though, as now that you've been about a year and running and publishing the podcast? How many stories do you think you have?
So we've got, let me see, over 50 episodes.
Okay.
And so that was kind of the weird part, was we went through those original ones all in fall semester 2020, and ran out of stuff. And right. So I thought, okay, what are we going to do next? How do we do this? And actually, I kind of was excited about thinking that I could do it. And so I talked to Jenny Pape over in radio and television and media arts. She's an associate or a lecturer there. And I said, I want to do this podcast. What should what do I need to know? And we talked, we had a nice meeting. She said, go out and listen to Studs Terkel. And that's how you want to do this. And so I found old YouTubes of Studs Terkel. And fortunately, he was a great interviewer. He had a horrible voice, but a great interviewer, and so that made me feel a little more comfortable. And so I started out by interviewing two of my roommates from college, and I figured that was like, if I messed it up, I wouldn't feel too bad. The pressure wasn't on. But one was Bob Farrar, who was an accounting major, and then the other was Doug Vincent and his wife, whom they met here in Carbondale, Linda Lehman Vincent, and we ran that episode on February 14th, on Valentine's Day, and they are Doug and Linda are by far the most popular ones we have. They've had the most listens to. The funny part of that was, and this is why it was good that I started out with my roommates, was I recorded them, or we'd use Zoom to meet and do the recording, and I forgot to turn on the recording button. So we talked for an hour.
Been there.
Didn't really? Thank God. Thanks. And it took me a month to get up the courage to tell them, even though they were friends of mine.
Uh-huh.
And so a month later, I called them up and said, you know what? And they were gracious enough to do a second session, and it was great. It made me feel, so I got those those two interviews off my, out of the way, and my big mistake out of the way, although I made many more, I'm sure. And then started rolling, and we interviewed somebody, who had done an exhibit at the art museum, at the university museum, and just started rolling with people. And I ask people who should I interview, and they tell me. And one guy I talked to wrote a book called Marketing the Moon. And
right. We've talked to him before here as well.
Right. Rich Jurek.
Yeah.
Fascinating guy. Fascinating how the Apollo's mission was marketed not just to the U.S. It became a worldwide phenomena. And what a great guy he was. Everybody was so good and so friendly, and it just fascinating. One of the nicest things was last spring. A guy sent me an email, and he said, "Hey, I've been listening to this, and I wonder if you'd like to talk to me." Speaking of which, anybody who wants to, reach out, I'd love it. I'm always looking for people to interview.
Oh yeah, we're going to get to that on how people can.
Okay, all right. Well, I just want to give them a little teaser. So the guy whose name is Sean Clanky, he reached out, and I said, "Sure, I'm always looking." And he lives in Hokkaido, Japan.
Okay.
And so we talked about, what was it like to go to school here? What were you interested in? And it was just a wonderful conversation, because here was a guy who, didn't have a lot of money when he was going to school. In fact, I think he's the one said he would have really benefited from a food pantry, because he was really scraping money together. It was tough to afford college. He did scrape enough money to study in France for a little bit, because that was his dream, to live in another country. And he ended up, he reached out, he lived in the international students dorm. He met a woman from Japan who was an international student here. They eventually got married, and he lives in Hokkaido. He went on to get a PhD in linguistics. He teaches English, and what a fascinating life, because he had his dream, he focused on it, and he went forward. And there's not a whole lot of us who really are that driven and who know what they want to do. It was, it's just fun to talk to these people, and almost to the person, they talk about. I ask them who influenced their lives while they were down here, and they have such wonderful things to say about the faculty here, the people who helped them, mentored them through their undergraduate years, and changed their lives just by being here at SIU.
Right. And it really does speak to this is a great way and a great format to drill down to the heart of what these stories are, because we know we have all these stories of people whose lives were changed thanks to SIU, or thanks to their experience at SIU, or thanks to a person who helped them at SIU. And, there's never been that this is a great way to let them tell these stories in their own words as well. It really is become an oral history project of, the students and the life of the university.
Yes, exactly. And so what we're doing with them too is we're saving all the raw audio, and we're putting it into our Special Collections Research Center, so that future students 50, 60 years from now will be able to listen to them and hear some of the stories that we've collected. And personally, I think they're fascinating. Go ahead.
No, I mean, they would have to be, and I mean, you get to these are it's in these stories that the little details about how life on campus used to be, how it's changed. You can get a sense of what it was like from the photos that you see or from what you read, but it's really through these personal accounts that a former student, and they tell us at the Alumni Association quite often, that a story about that little thing that made their
Right.
experience, and
Yeah. Yeah.
it's in the details of where the most fascinating parts of these things are, and that's where you kind of get to really dive deep into them by doing
Yeah. Exactly, Caleb. That's exactly it. I had just and people sort of open up and I get these surprised moments that I'm thinking, wow, I never expected to go there, and and actually that happened this fall. It really moved me. We had an exhibit of paintings in the rotunda of Morris Library
it.
from this student who had graduated a couple of years earlier and was an immigrant from Mexico and grew up in Cobden. And they were, the paintings were tied to a video that was shown, a documentary that was done by one of our other students called Footprints in the Air. And it talked about the Mexican community, Mexican American community that grew up and that developed in Cobden, and they
Right.
all the people, how people migrate, they come in bunches from areas, and somebody comes here and then brings their family up and then brings some more people, and so the people in Cobden all come from this place called, or most of them come from this place called Chiran, Michoacan. And I'm sure you know that in Michoacan is the place where, and it actually in this city, in this area, where all the monarch butterflies migrate to. So we've got a connection back to, where all those trees fill up with monarchs.
Right.
And so they're kind of symbolic of the movement and the migration up to here. Well, this student, this Juana Duran Charicata, came up with her parents. She was born in Mexico. Came up with their parents to pick apples and peaches in the orchards, and migrated around for a while to different areas to pick crops. And so she talked about that, and then she talked about what it was like to be an undocumented immigrant and go to school at SIU, and what a struggle it was. And because she didn't have a social security card, didn't have a driver's license, but we were, she graduated from the high school and she enrolled in SIU, and SIU did things to help undocumented citizens.
Mm-hmm.
And then she was making it was working while she was doing it, and then she got pulled over by the cops and didn't have a license, and so she couldn't drive, so that meant she couldn't work, she couldn't get to class, and it was a struggle for a while. And then DACA came.
Right.
And so she's a DACA student, and she got her social security card, came back, studied art and education, and now she teaches art up in Chicago. And it was just a wonderful, because you don't get those stories that much. You hear about it in the news. You hear about these DACA kids, but you don't know what it meant to them, and it means to them to get their social security card, get on the path to being citizens, hopefully, and being safe here and safe to get an education.
Right. And I think maybe the most exciting part about this is how you realize you've gotten about 50 strong into these stories right now, but how you've probably barely scratched the surface of what kind of information is out there about that.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
let's start talking about, well, how do people, if they come across this, how do they, I guess, it's no imposition. How do they invite themselves to come on and share their story?
Well, basically they can, some people make comments on the Facebook pages when so what happens is I'll record something. Oh, this is what's really exciting, is that I've got no idea how to manage audio. And so Jennifer Pape has set me up with her students for 2 semesters now, and they are amazing. And so I just send the raw footage to the students, and they fix it up and make it. Their student work study students, and they fix it up and they put a nice program together. And so now, where was I going with that? So, then when it gets published, I make posts up to Morris Library, my home page, my Facebook page, the WTF Carbondale page, because they're really active in what's happening, and then the 80s and 90s group on Facebook.
Okay.
And so we get that out, so they can comment. They see my email, my name on Facebook. They can make a comment there, or they can email me at john.pollitz@siu.edu, and I'll spell that JOHN.POLLITZ. It's right there on the screen. Oops. Anyway, and at SIU.edu, and I'd be glad to hear from anyone, and we'll put something together.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm sure I say don't think you have to have the world's most exciting story to reach out as well. It's like we said, the fascinating part is in those details of what life was like on any day.
Exactly.
Let's say if someone contacts you and they say, I'd like to talk about my time at SIU, but they might not necessarily know what specifically. How do you kind of prompt the good stuff out of them?
So what I always do is I've got a pat script, and where I ask, when they graduated, who is the most important person in their experience, who influenced them the most, and usually they can't come up with just one, and it's always that, and that just brings out these stories about how wonderful our faculty are.
Mm-hmm.
What their fondest memory from their time is, what they would do over if they had the chance, and then what happens later. And usually there's 5. We kind of pop through those 5 questions, and then it goes up, and I try to be Studs Terkel-ish. Ooh, that's a new one, and make it a conversation. And usually I ask a few questions and then I shut up, and it goes. You get these surprised little insights, and it moves on forward. And that's the real exciting thing.
Yeah, and I think it's always probably a little bit more emotional sometimes than you first expected.
Oh yeah,
it to be on a lot of things, because once you start talking about the people who did impact your life here, I mean, I've got a couple of my own who sadly they're no longer with us today, but they really did have an impact on my experience at SIU, and the people I remember associate most strongest with my education here.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm sure everyone's got those stories, and if you don't, everyone's got a story about just getting in trouble on campus as well. Those are always fun ones as well.
Right.
So,
yeah.
have you gotten any past the point of incrimination stories or so that finally people copped to or admitted to, and finally I can.
Oh my goodness! Do you hear that? I'm sorry.
Well, I'm hearing some of it, but that's all right.
Okay.
But the people who say that finally maybe I can finally get this off my chest. I've been holding this in for 30 years, but now you had any of those?
Not really. No, we did. No, absolutely not. I mean, everybody I talked to, pretty much happy with their experience. One guy, one of my roommates, did talk about um, the riots in '69
Right.
and his experience, which was not not horrendous, but it was it's good history. It's
Yeah.
good history to hear about going down to Main Street when everybody was protesting and it got out of hand. So
Yeah, and like we said, it's important to get these histories down, especially in people's own voice. These become, more than podcasts necessarily. These become, primary documents in the preservation of history about a university, about its student population as well.
yeah,
So, we've shared with you today how you can reach out to John, or look for the Saluki Stories podcast. It's pretty much on every major podcast service you can imagine. So
right.
pick your preferred platform and search out the Saluki Stories, and you'll probably find it there. Start listening to it, and then we invite you to contact John to
Join me. Yes, right.
join him on camera. Maybe share a sentimental story, or share one of your deepest, darkest secrets from your days as a student.
Right. Yeah.
On there, those are all entertaining, all important parts of the SIU story and history. So, John, I thank you for taking some time with us today to talk about the work that you've been doing on this.
Thank you, Caleb. This was fun.
Yeah, and everyone, please tune in with us in a couple weeks when we're back here. But otherwise, I will leave everyone with have a good day and go Dogs.
Hey, go Dogs. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks.